Hey, everybody, welcome to Every Damn Friday. I'm really excited today. Um, he is a towering figure in Kentucky music. I'll never forget the first time I met him. I thought I was tall, and I thought I just met the Undertaker. Uh, I've got Mr. Justin Wells with me. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you, Josh?
Where are you playing tonight?
Not playing, man. I'm going to see BJ at the Burrow.
Oh, nice, nice. I saw that. I love me
Yeah.
some American Aquarium.
He's, doing his solo tour and just in case he were to have, days off
That's just yeah. He
from
doesn't want
American
he
Express.
wants no idle hands or the devil's workshop, right?
Yeah, dude, that dude's one of them sharks that, he only sleeps one half of his brain at a time or something.
I hear you. Well, hey man, uh, the last time I saw you, I think it was at Byron's benefit, and what a special night that was.
Man. Yeah, bunch of grown men cleaning out all the Kleenex in the spot.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And we're both lucky enough to get to play it and experience what a special time kicking it was. Delusion.
No, I'm here.
Okay, I said, we were so lucky to get to experience kicking it and kind of what that whole thing was.
Yeah, man. It was a beautiful thing that, you know, I was physically there for a bunch of it, and it
I hear you. It was,
was in my
but
partying days.
but it was also like it was an opportunity where a bunch of artists got to watch each other because we miss. I've missed so many great shows over the years because I was playing show, and
Yeah,
it was kind of neat to get all those people together at one time and kind of get to watch each other, get to visit, hang out, and it was definitely a Kentucky love fest.
I really feel like that was kind of really. I would say that's like chapter one of whatever this kind of like Kentucky thing is. That was when it started feeling organized.
Like a movement.
Yeah, man. Because I was talking to somebody the other day talking about some young cat in Kentucky, and I think they called him fourth generation. And I'm like, what's the Wikipedia article? Like, what generation are we in? I need to,
Yeah, yeah.
I need to
Well,
know.
because it's obviously there's all the I know Wickstrom talks about the Mount Rushmore and everybody picks their people, but like kind of like the modern movement, I think obviously you were doing Fifth on the Floor, uh, you know I was doing Jericho Woods. There was lots of people out there banging around, but then Sonny Best had a lot of exposure out of kind of the Lexington scene, and I feel like that kind of set the stage in a lot of ways for like a national audience kind of taking notice, like how big they were, and it was still like very grassroots, and it kind of paved the way. I think a lot of people look to that and say, I looked at that and thought I could do that. They seemed like they were playing music that sounded like what we were doing, or at least had the same sentiment. It wasn't truck boat truck,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, I mean,
obviously,
I remember them taking Tyler out, and that's when I really feel like Tyler started having a lot bigger audience.
well, and obviously Tyler has been a great ambassador for what we do, almost to the point where there's so many copycats out there playing Tyler Childers style music that I I kind of feel bad for him because um, you know it they people are standing on his shoulders, but his style of music um, is one thing, but it also opened it up for all the people who play different stuff. It's like I've seen you talking about like you like people like to say we're country-ish because we're from Kentucky, but that's not really what you play.
No,
It,
I mean, I think that you know when I play some of these most recent sets, I think there's you know three songs that I would call country. I also don't think, it's real cool for us to say genre doesn't matter. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. For me, and I think part of this is just kind of laziness starting out, but like pretty early on, I was just kind of gonna do what I was gonna do, you know. And I like all kinds of things, kind of talking about what you're talking about, finding our whatever box we fit in. I just remember somebody telling me when I was starting out that if you do what you're kind of referring to in some of these cats that are maybe getting a little too close to sounding like somebody else. If you do that, that can be great for you short term. But, you know, if you're yourself and you don't really tie yourself to any one thing, might be harder in the short, but it's a lot better for you in the long run, you know?
Well, having that 30,000 foot, you know, view where you're looking down the road, like, what do I want this to be in 20 years? Because I think that's, ultimately that we're all infected with the disease that we're not going to quit. So it's like, do
I have
you want to?
I have no other marketable talents, but
Well, I've got things that have paid the bills over the years, but this is the one thing I can't shake. I can walk away from everything else. Uh,
yeah.
but but like you're saying, it's one of those deals where you. I've been in multiple bands, and I've generally always been the front guy and have written most of the songs. And I changed the name, try to change direction, and ultimately, I always just kind of ended up sounding like what I always do. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think, if you'll just let that happen, it turns into it to whatever it's going to be. Like,
Yeah,
your
don't
set
try
was
so
very,
hard. Like,
like, your new stuff was
yeah.
very, like, almost like, I don't know, it kind of had blues. Maybe not is the right word, but it was like, it was kind of more ballady than I expected.
You talking about
It,
the new
yeah, the new
record?
stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember you kind of being like, I think we played together at a festival in Louisville, and it was very kind of like in your face, a little bit more driving. What I
Yeah.
expected from a 7 foot tall mountain of a man.
Yeah.
But what I saw at Byron's thing was a lot kind of more the other side of Justin Wells.
Well, yeah, man. I think that, kind of speaking of this whole conversation, like, I'm only competing with myself, man. I think, that's, hang on one second. There's Adam Lee calling in. Um, I mean, that's not true. I'm aware of things that are going on. There's only so many gigs. There's only so many hours for people to listen to music. But, um, I want to outdo what I did before. And B, kind of most importantly, I don't want to repeat myself, man, because there is so much. People are being bombarded with so much art now, and I think that that's in general a very good thing. I hope. Um, but so why, you know what I mean? Like, there's no you hit one button and you can hear my whole catalog. Why repeat myself? Uh, and
That
almost to
was
a
that
point.
was something, that's something I struggled with early on because, you know, we were close enough because I'm in like West Central Kentucky. So, geographically, Nashville was really close, and it seemed like a natural thing. Like, well, let's go do to the music city and do the music thing. We worked with producers and all that kind of stuff, and they wanted every song to kind of sound the same, and it's like I don't want to do that song again. I don't want to, and I love ACDC. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want every record to, like you said, to sound just like the thing I did before. Like, I'm a different
Yeah,
person. Experiences have changed. I've maybe fell in love with a different artist, and I'm listening to different music. Um, yeah, I think it's natural. Now, people don't always
yeah,
like that.
that's okay. I don't, I don't know. I think we get a little too stuck in making art for everybody to like. You know,
Yeah.
I've
Well,
always been, and I get crap about this a little bit, but I've always been drawn to artists that are, frankly, a little bit combative, and I've been that with my audience, and it's something I've really tried to analyze and think about
I,
what the.
I read the posts. You know.
Well, if you're talking about the one I'm referring to, the what I was trying to speak to there was not to give that person hell, but I think, and now more so than ever with the social media just running our lives, that um, we kind of like, if you start off, you kind of have these patrons or whatever that are part of your success, and like you're asking people to come to the show and all that kind of thing. But I think sometimes the relationship gets a little blurry with I don't for me, you're not participating in my art. If you want to buy my album, I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't like it, I hope it makes a good frisbee. But you coming to my show, buying my album,
You don't owe
you're
me a
not
favor.
becoming you're not on the board of my creativity. Uh, you're facilitating me being able to make a living at it, which I'm grateful for. But that's really where the line needs to be for me. And maybe other people feel differently, but especially in country music, which I'm a cousin to, or like an outsider in, and it's always felt a little weird. That thing, man, and it's why I didn't ever like tip jars in front of my stage, because I don't want people to feel like, well, I just put $100 in there, play me a
Wagon
Johnny
wheel.
Cash
Let's
song or
go.
whatever. Like, no, dog. And in fact, and this is kind of speaking to what I think I'm talking about with my personality or whatever I'm trying to unpack. In fact, if you ask me for a song, then I'm just not going to play it if it was on the set list almost. And
Well, or you're gonna maybe you move it back. I'm the same way. I play a lot of solo shows, and that um, and I'm real honest with people. I'm like, I'm not a jukebox. Like I don't know the new Morgan Wallen song. I apologize. Like
yeah,
I just put out a new CD. I'd really like to play those songs if you don't mind. And
yeah,
uh, you know, and and to speak to what you're saying is, the last record that I did, I just put two mics up and played some songs. I had a couple friends play some instruments or play some stuff on it about fiddle and harp, but I had no. It was just songs I needed to get out and get off my chest, and if they disappeared into ether, in the white noise, whatever.
yeah,
But it actually had more. I've gotten more traction out of that one than I have the ones that we spent thousands of dollars on and had Grammy winning producer. It's like,
yep,
I'd never had any luck streaming before. I'd never, and unless you got a car from 2010, you know, you're not going to want my CD probably either. And
yeah,
vinyl is $1,200 for 100. That's a big investment if you think you're only going to sell 30. So
yeah.
yeah. At the end of the day, it's the internet's forever, and if you're going to put something out there on it, it better be something that you're proud of and that you can stand behind.
And that you're happy with, man. Like that's scratching whatever itch it is that gets us all riled up to begin with, and sets us on this path, man. I'm not a good liar. I'm kind of bad at wearing my heart on my sleeve, and sometimes that means I kind of say something that maybe makes someone else uncomfortable. But like, if I'm not into a thing, if I'm not into a song or something, it's going to be apparent. And so I
Hey,
don't want to do that. And
I've recorded a lot of songs that were off the set list within two or three shows because you know it just wasn't getting done. Like I didn't feel it in a live setting.
sure.
Well, let's talk about your history a little bit. So, you even mentioned today in a post, you start out in Louisiana. How do you end up in Cynthiana?
Toyota.
Okay.
We were. I've told this a time or two, but I grew up. It's kind of like, okay. First of all, not a country music kid, but definitely a kid in the country. Um, but I grew up at the literal end of a literal dead end road in a trailer in Blanchard, Louisiana, Cattle Parish. Um, and we were poor, is what people would call it. I didn't know that, but
I find
you
that we
know,
all were, we didn't know it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I come from a great family, real supportive, and so they were struggling to make ends meet, and meanwhile, we had more than we ought to had in that trailer, as kids, and
And
toys and what have
Louisiana is a different kind of country. My my father-in-law is from Bow Bridge, and
Mm-hmm.
we went down and visited before my wife and I got married. Visited his
Yeah.
mom. I mean, on the freaking swamp, like
It's different.
yeah, it
It's
all the boudin stands on the side of the road, and
yeah,
it was neat. I could,
bro. There's
everybody called me a coon ass, and like I couldn't understand them.
you about to get that explicit tag on your podcast.
Yeah,
Um, no, that just you got to explain to your listeners that just means you can cook. Um,
I know.
no, dude. Look, I'm gonna get my Kentucky colonelship revoked, but bro, you go in a gas station in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana, you get the best fried chicken in your life. I'm sorry, Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, he might have stole it,
He might have stole it, man, or at least he knew where to find it.
but you ended up.
Anyway,
So
so
Dad took a
Louisiana
job at Toyota.
took a job at Toyota. Really, doubled his income, I think, by my understanding, and put us, firmly lower middle class. But my parents pursued their dream, and it is the American dream, which I'm not even sure you could replicate in 2025. But the old man worked his ass off, 80, 90 hours a week. My mom worked her ass off down there. She was throwing papers in the morning, before dad had to go to work, and then raising kids and babysitting a bunch of kids. And so um anyway, moved up here it's actually Leesburg, Kentucky, which is Harrison County, but it's between
Okay.
Georgetown and Cynthiana. And um yeah, dude, I was just a weird kid in a small town, sensitive kid. Kind of quietly writing love songs while also participating in my like Metallica cover band. Basically, we didn't say we were that, but that's what we were. Um, and man, like all the kids that kind of like picked on me listened to country music. So that was like the other. I was very much like I don't know, like our crew was like the Beavis and Butthead cats. You know what I
Hey, there
mean?
you
Like
go.
Metallica shirt, blue jeans, AC/DC, Ozzy, whatever. Pink Floyd was my shit. And yeah, dude, like other than George Jones, I wasn't about no country, man. That was right in the middle of, Garth and whatever was after.
Yeah,
Um, and
we were
so I don't
lucky to
know,
be
like,
born when we were born.
yeah, man. Well, all the young guys now are like trying to go back to that, and I'm like, why? Yeah,
It was great then, but I
it
tried to. I
makes
was explaining to I've got an 18-year-old and 17-year-old and a 12-year-old, and he was trying to talk about. He said, I guess essentially he was trying to say that like him listening to 90s music was like me loving 70s music,
sure.
which is true. I said,
Well,
but the 80s were special. Like to be a kid in the 80s, man, it
yeah,
was just, you were riding your BMX bike off of jumps, behind the school. It's
yeah,
like your parents did, we were latchkey kids. Like your parents didn't have Life 360 on you. You
yeah,
could stay out until it got dark. It was just, the movies were great, but you had to go to a theater, in a town over to watch them. It was just a different time. And but that also like influenced all the stuff that we got to experience as high schoolers with the Nirvana and the Pearl Jam and all that. It's like the world kind of changed. And
yeah. And I think I'm a little bit after you, so it was like really even shittier music. Like it was post grunge, which was pretty cool, but then it was like new metal and shit. And like, I'm dating myself just like you are, but like wasn't no Spotify, dude. You was listening to what was on WKQQ. And then Z103 came along and they got a little weird, so you could get like some cake and some White Town and some alternative. And
there
that
you
kind
go.
of blew my brain open a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I would. For me, it was if we went to Elizabethtown or Louisville, I would take my $20 I'd saved up, and we'd go to disc jockey or whatever, and
yeah,
it
dude,
was a
jockey.
gamble, you know, because you were buying a CD a lot of times based on what it looked like, or if it was print
Yep.
advisory, that meant it was probably good. And
Yeah,
you know,
dude. Do you remember buying CDs from people you never heard of just because the album cover was awesome?
yeah, and falling in love with them. Well, and you had
Maybe.
you met. Well, I remember I bought Vitalogy, Pearl Jam.
Hmm. Hmm.
And of course 10 was great and Versus was great and Vitalogy was kind of weird. But I'd spent
Yeah.
15 freaking dollars on it. So I was gonna love it. And
Yeah.
it ended up being one of my favorite records. But like I knew I wasn't gonna get a new record for at least another week or two. So
Hmm.
I had to I just listened to the shit out of it and eventually convinced myself that I had to like it. But I couldn't just scroll to the next one, you know?
Yeah. No,
You had an investment.
you had an investment and you had perhaps a little more patience for it, whether you wanted to or not, because of like you said, man, I just bought this album. I don't know when I'm gonna buy another album. So you're probably gonna listen to it at least two or three times, give it a shot. Well, some of the things that are of a higher palette, you got to listen to a couple times, man. Wasn't a lot of
Yeah.
people stoked on jazz the first time they heard jazz.
Yeah.
You got to listen to it a couple times. And some of
You
my favorite
maybe
records I hated at first,
Well, maybe it's a like there's some artists that I listen to in the wintertime exclusively. Because
Hmm.
that's when it's perfect, when it's gray and the sun goes down too fast. And then there's some stuff I listen to, and I'm getting ready to get into my Black Crows phase because it's starting to warm up a little bit.
Yeah.
This is that I'm gonna listen to Horsehead on my way to work.
Yeah.
But uh, but yeah, you had to like you said, you had to be patient and people are that investment we were talking about was actually paying artists and they were making livings. It what do you feel about streaming right now? Because I know Cynthiana, your new record. We can talk about it here in a second. I know it's probably got tens of thousands of streams, maybe 100,000 streams, but that really doesn't put gas in the tank.
Not directly. Yeah, I mean it's definitely doing the best of anything I've ever done, and it's kind of on pace to do that. My whole Fifth on the Floor career was pre streaming. We were in iTunes, and I remember I got a call from our manager at the time, like, "Hey, you're in the iTunes top 100 for whatever, probably country." Probably country because Hootie was on there,
There
and
you
we were
go.
not far from Hootie. It was the first week of sales. We charted on the Billboard charts for 1 week, and then it's gone.
Yes. Well, we
But
were on the heat seeker charts one time in Jericho Woods,
yeah,
and
yeah,
same thing. I got a call and I was like, "We just want to let you know that you have made it to number 8 in the regional heat seeker on Billboard." I'm like, "Bullshit," and
yeah,
and like you said, then whenever all your friends had already bought it, the next week it was over.
yeah. Well, I'm just over here laughing because I'm like, "Hey, look, man, I don't really think I'm country music per se, as we've discussed, but I'll take it. Fifth on the Floor, sure."
Yeah, yeah.
that was. I always thought of us as a rock band with accents, but um,
I
you
used
know,
to tell people, well, I tell a lot of people as a songwriter, like Foo Fighters is my favorite band. Like I love Dave Grohl. He's my dude. He's my Paul McCartney, right? And
hmm,
so my whole career, I've tried to write Foo Fighters songs, but it always sounds like John Anderson singing Tom Petty.
that's awesome.
Well, I guess it hadn't had any of the success of any of those three people, but you can't help but sound like you sound.
If you're being honest, yeah.
Yeah,
And sometimes I think maybe some of these cats are being honest and just sound derivative and bummer.
yeah,
That
yeah.
must suck. But um, yeah, I don't know, man. Spotify to me is like not the making that check is not the end game.
Right.
That's unfortunately we kind of got to treat that as like a bonus, but I see it more as like it's like a what am I trying to say? Not like a social media tool, but like a promotion tool. And
Well, I've tried to tell people it's kind of like we've almost went back to the 50s
yep,
where Spotify is the jukebox in the bar. And if you
and it's
want
all singles.
yeah, and if you want to play in that town, you got to be in the jukebox. And so being on these playlists like the Whiskey Riffs and the Country Centrals and the whatevers, it does kind of allow you to go into some of these markets that you wouldn't normally play in, maybe. because you're getting a little bit of exposure, and you can kind of see that through Spotify. I wish they would let you tap into that a little bit more. Like, let's say you have, 1,000 listeners in Atlanta. It'd be nice if there was a way for you to like contact directly those 1,000 listeners and be like, I'm playing in Atlanta on this day. I wish, if they're not going to pay you, I wish Spotify would at least make it a little bit more interactive.
Yeah, well, if they can find a way to for them to monetize that, I'm sure they'll do that. But they let you get your concert listings up on Spotify. So whatever. I don't know. Spotify to me is like the devil we know, you
Yeah.
know. And I try not to ever really rail against it. It's better paying than what was before, frankly.
True. True.
And
Well, that's what.
I know some of these old timers that were touring, when we were kids, like pre Napster, bro, those bands are making the same money as we were making 20 years later. I'm like, but y'all wasn't competing with nothing.
Yes.
Y'all rolling
Oh,
to town. There wasn't no other bands, wasn't no
right.
Netflix, bro.
I remember I was in a band called Floored when I was at Western. So this is late 1900s, early 2000s, and we had a lot of success. We were kind of a rock and country band, and we were real close to getting signed, and then Napster just like obliterated that, and they weren't signing nobody. Like, it was like they had, every label had like three people on it, and that was it. Like Tim McGraw and all these huge people, and it really shifted the industry then. And we weren't smart enough to see that that was our way to get our music out to people. And every one of these things you have to, like, we can't stop it. It's like a tsunami. So like you
Yeah.
said, there's no sense railing against it. You have to adjust to it. But how do you think that has affected your touring reach?
You mean like Spotify specifically?
Well, just social media and the ability to kind of be on all these platforms.
I don't know. It certainly feels like a full time job to stay on top of all that shit. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why I've had managers that are now former managers because
I had a Hey, so funny story. I've got a friend, had a record deal, has a tens of thousands of dollars spent on a record, has a management company, booking agency, all these things. And I'm going to England next week to play. And uh, we were going to go together. And he's like, I'm waiting on my people to do their thing or whatever. I was like, man, like, I just called people and booked shows. Like, I bought flights. Like, come on,
yeah,
let's go. And he's like, well, I'm waiting for them to, and and that's something I learned a long time ago. And I've had some great managers, um, but like, nobody gives a shit about what I'm doing more than I do.
ever. I don't think it's ever going to be.
No, and how can they? How can they have that attachment to your art that you have? And you shouldn't expect them to. Now
Well,
there could come a
I don't
point
know
when
if
you
I
need
agree
help.
with that. I don't know if I agree with that. I think you could and should expect them to. And I was having this conversation with somebody younger than us recently. Like, Kentucky, let's not forget that Kentucky is still kind of in its infancy in terms of like having like infrastructure for the music business.
True.
We've got all these artists now. We got all these great songs, and I mean, our cup runneth over in this Commonwealth. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
An
Certainly the time
embarrassment
I've
of
been doing it.
riches.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. There's 19-year-olds crushing everybody else in the country. But uh, so what kind of springs up next is kind of like a little bit of that infrastructure, and it starts with um, Kick on the Creek, and before that, Mastering Musicians Festival, and so on and so forth. And then it's like, here, okay, here's these managers, and now there's going to start being some agents, and I think most, if not all of them, get into it with good intentions and wanting to be helpful. But I think what they don't maybe sometimes realize is like we eat, breathe, sleep this stuff. And if you're not even going to come anywhere close to that, don't call yourself a manager, dog. Like you can call yourself an assistant or a
True.
bookkeeper, but if you're not going to be passionate about it, man, get out of the way, dude. Because what's going to happen is you're going to work with some young kid uh, who's scared to fire you, and you're going to waste that kid's whole life, and I've wasted a little bit of time with other people, and I've kind of been rattling the cage a little bit with this kind of shit, is because it's never been a better time to handle all this shit ourselves. Now
Oh, we have all the tools.
that means we need to have like 4 full-time jobs, and that's fine. But the whole quote unquote needing a manager thing, the
Well,
people telling you that are probably managers.
I had a friend who worked at Red Light, and even as Jericho Woods got to our biggest, uh, our biggest success, he would still say, and he was a manager of he worked for one of the largest management companies in music, and he said, "Man," he goes, "Are you making money? And are you, is everybody getting paid? Like, are you comfortable?" Because he said, "There's a point where if you're out there doing it, uh, you don't need a manager if you're taking care of it, and then if you get to the point where you're making enough money and you're selling out shows and all that, then you definitely don't need a manager." He's like,
Hmm.
"It's for those people who are an artist, or maybe they're a singer. Uh, they don't write their songs. Like they need a person to place them into these things, like to put them into meetings with people and all that." He's like, "But if you're out there playing and grinding and writing and doing all the stuff," he's like, "maybe you don't need one. It's
Maybe.
not not an automatic. They're only gonna have the whatever contacts they have. And you might know the
Yep.
same people. I hired a publicity person for a record one time, and when I looked at the list of people that they sent the emails to, I was like, I had all those emails, and
Yep.
this cost me $2,000 or whatever. And I had more luck, and maybe this is the nature of social media too, and the change in the industry. But I had more luck just like direct messaging people on Instagram, just like I did you for this interview, on like placement on playlists. Like, hey man, I'd sure appreciate if you'd listen to this. If you like it, include it on a new music release post. And 9 times out of 10, they'd say, okay, yeah, man, we'll do that. They're just looking for content.
I need to do that.
Well,
That sounds like something I need to put on my checklist.
well, but I created like a list and an email list, and I could just do a blast.
Yeah.
Uh, it's same with the post. I know a lot of people, they'll do three or four. They'll build 3 or 4 or 5 posts at one time, and then schedule them out, over a couple days, to where they're not having to constantly be on their phone doing the stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you can just like I know people that spend 30 minutes every day writing songs. You know, you can spend 30 minutes a day, you know, putting some content together that you can roll out over time. I mean, like you said, all the tools are there, and it, but it is a kind of a soul sucking, energy draining thing to feel like you got to post every single day just to stay in the algorithm.
I think you just got to find your balance with that. And I don't think that I do that uh, as well as I should, or that I pay as much attention to as I should. It's also not real high on my list. You know what I mean? Like being a good father and a good husband is at the top of my list, and being honest with my art is number two, and everything else is whatever time's left over. And I get my records out slow as hell anyway. So last thing I need to do is slow it down too much. So
Right.
I try to do the social media. I try to interact with it in as much as I'm comfortable. Um, and try not to get caught up in people's bullshit. You know, one or two
I
haters
can't
that
believe you didn't play this song, man.
I don't know, man. This one old gal was talk about. She just missed when my voice sounded like it was breaking. It's like, hey, remember in 2019 when my voice broke and I couldn't work for like 6 months? I think I'm trying to like go the distance here.
Yeah, yeah. They don't understand. Like, if you're doing that for an hour and a half, 2 hours, we were sometimes playing 4 hour sets because those are the ones that paid bills. Like, I
Yep.
can't go for it every night.
I couldn't do a 4 hour set right now to save my life.
I don't want to.
I
I've,
mean, you're
I've
gonna
done it a
get some
lot.
extended ass solos. You're gonna get some long ass solos, but yeah, same man. We kind of Fifth on Floor started out in the honky tonks. Way we shouldn't have been in. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's not what we should have been doing either artistically or even like song. Like we didn't sound like those bands.
Yeah.
And we figured it out pretty quick. And what we figured out was exactly what you said is like the stuff that matters that's going to develop where actual real fans are buying tickets and kind of committing to a year, 5 years, the rest of their lives to being with you and your art. They ain't in them honky tonks blasting Jim Beam, bro. Like,
Yeah.
no offense, but if we're playing 4 hours, that means we're background noise. So we got to get out of that, man. And
Yep.
and I think Spotify and these things that like we're talking about, I think a lot of these younger cats are getting to skip those
Yeah. Look,
bad
I
habit
learned I learned
places.
my lesson. I think the way Tyler started playing solo acoustic, and he could play anywhere. It didn't cost him nothing. You know, as long as he got beer and food, he could, and a little gas money, he could make it to the next place, and you could build something. I started right out of the gate with bands where you got 5 mouths to feed. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Us
have
too.
to go to Austin City Saloon and play all night long.
Buddy, I did my first album release at Austin City Saloon in
Yeah,
2007.
I love that place, but it was like you got 445s, and for your
I got
$1,000 or whatever,
Bro,
and
I got banned from there under previous ownership because this person was telling us what we needed to do with our set list, and my response was, "Is this from all your successful years in the band?" And this person was not a musician, and so I was not allowed to play there for a
you were
long
selling,
time.
and you were selling all the beer and whiskey for them too.
Maybe. I mean, my argument is maybe I wasn't, and I don't give a shit. But I'll tell you what, I got Sunday Valley booked in there, and for one Thursday, one time, you saw them sell out a PBR in about an hour, and more punk rock kids than you've ever seen in a honky tonk, and it was
Uh,
cool.
the good old days, right?
Yeah, man.
Well, and I, you talk about uh, kind of following your muse and playing whatever you want to play and not playing the same thing. Sturgill's definitely been a champion for that too. Just
That
do
was
it
my
whatever.
dude.
Just
That
go with
was
the wind, man.
he's. I think I was talking earlier about being kind of combative. I mean, is there a more combative artist from our
Like
region than
you're saying,
Stooge?
I sound like Waylon. Well, screw that.
Yeah.
I'm never going to play that stuff ever again. I'm going to do a rock record, or I'm
And
going
he
to.
knew he can't give too much shit about sounding like Waylon. He knew what he was doing, but
Oh yeah,
I think that was from those of us that were around what he was doing before the solo shit, and them kind of all just saying he's a Waylon clone. It's like, man, he's kind of hiding something you don't know about,
yeah.
and I'm glad he let that freak flag fly because
Me too.
his most interesting stuff to me is when he's way outside the lines.
Hey, if you're going to sing a song about turtles all the way down, I'm your guy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. All the credit in the world to Stu, because I think Tyler got to enjoy a lot of the bounty, but those walls were breaking prior by Stu, and really, man, Shooter
Yep.
deserves so much credit.
Yeah, he did.
Not Kentuckian, but honorary in my book.
Exactly. But tell me about Cynthiana. So where'd this record come from?
Cynthia, no.
Dad
It came
jokes. See,
from
that's how I know you're a dad.
the seeds were kind of during the pandemic, and we couldn't work, and for the first time in our marriage, I was home a lot and really feeling in the way, and just appreciating a slowed down life and appreciating that when we're off in a van acting like pirates and pretending to be rock stars and doing the work, uh, life is not like just on pause back home,
Somebody's holding it
and
down for you.
it's my wife, man, and most of us have somebody. If we've got any sort of stability at home, we got somebody who, if it's 50-50, best case scenario, when you're home, that person becomes 100% when you're gone, or 99.9. And that's her, man. And it just frankly felt unfair that everybody's commenting on my stupid post or whatever. Like, where's the credit for these people that do the real thing that matters?
Yeah, I mean,
And
I quit teaching, making about 70 grand a year, to go do this thing for 5 years, and
Yeah.
you know, and she was like, if that makes you happy, that's fine, And my kids, I had 3 kids that were school age that had to be dropped off everywhere and picked up and fed and all those things. And like you said, I had some guilt and a little bit of am I being selfish kind of sometimes, um, but definitely she's the one that gave me the grant. If she had said no, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Well, conversely, if she hadn't encouraged me to keep my head in the game and nose down ever forward, I'd have walked a couple times.
Yeah.
You know, post fifth on the floor. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't probably don't know what I'm doing now. I'm in a healthy brain space, but I don't know. I just wanted to honor her and what started coming out in my writing. There was an absolute through line with like one or two songs, and so I'm like, well, I'm just going to write this whole thing, and got a little bit of help on it for the first time ever. I've never really been. I've co-written on other people's stuff, but I've never really brought that into my creativity. And uh, my buddy Adam Lee, who you've met, I'm sure,
Oh
and who's kind of like a step cousin to this Kentucky scene. He's lived up in
yeah.
Ludlow now for better part of a decade, but um, he's just one of the best writers I know, and I think he's one of the best writers that a bunch of people don't know. And so yeah, man, worked with him on a couple of songs. Worked with like my childhood songwriting hero Matthew Ryan on a song, um, and it's all just kind of this love thing, and it was mostly that, man, just wanting to honor her, but also like exploring, like you said, just another side of what I'm interested in and what I do, and that was kind of this like I wanted to. What would happen if we just sounded like the room? If we didn't sound like we were on a mountain like we did on the last record, if we just really brought it in and try to get a little intimacy.
Well, man, I love it. It sounds great. If people want to get it, how can they get it online, or if they can't get to a show, like what's the best place to go get Justin Wells stuff?
If they can't get to a show, I just want them to know that everybody's talking about them behind their back. But uh, JustinWellsMusic.com, and I'm on all the things.
Well, man, I know you're heading to Lexington to watch BJ tonight. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time with me today. I'm a big fan. I think you're a great example for other artists, and you're somebody that people can get behind and artists can look up to. So I appreciate what you do and having your own voice, and I'm glad to call you a brother in Kentucky music, man.
Yeah, Josh, man, all the love in the world to you, man, and thanks for having me on the show, brother.
All right, guys. Hey, every damn Friday, go find us on YouTube. Go check out all the other interviews that I've done. This is number 30, I think. I've done something 30 weeks in a row. That's pretty amazing.
Good
Um,
work.
but thanks again for listening. And thanks, Justin, for coming and visiting with us today.
See ya.